Hey, everybody, welcome to Punch Kick Choke Chat. My name is Sean Benson. I'm one of your hosts, and we're really excited to do this short. But as we were discussing before, we're not super excited about some of it because we're talking about something that I think is very deep, very important, and it's something where I'm going to be listening more than talking because I don't personally have experience with it, and I'm really grateful for that. Today, what we're going to talk about as a single topic short is losing a sensei. And we're here with Sensei Doug Knispel, with Sensei Nicholas Suino and Hanchi Gary Legacy, and Sensei Randy Dauphin, who's also one of our co-hosts always, who also doesn't share that experience, but these three have. And so we're going to get into this topic with them. And when I say I'm excited, again, I'm not excited that this is part of their lives, but I'm very excited to hear the depth and what I assume will be the reverence, because I know we all have that for our teachers. So let's not waste a lot of time and let's get started. So what we're going to do off the beginning is just have each person say hello and talk about who their senseis were and talk about how long they trained with them. So let's start with you, Sensei Knispel.
Yeah, so my sensei was Steve Reynolds. He's a Canadian Jiu-Jitsu pioneer. I think we talked in the last PKCC episode about him. I was his student from day one till last year, so that's 42 years I was with him. Um, I've had mentors, of course, but as far as my sensei goes, he was my sensei for the 42 years, all my training.
Right on. Sensei Suino, what about you?
Well, the two senseis that had the most impact on me, Yamaguchi Sensei and Sato Sensei, I trained in a concentrated way with them for 4 years in Japan, but also before that and after that in many seminars, both here in the United States and in Japan. So they had an outsized impact in a very few years. Those are the two senseis that have had the most impact on my life.
Thanks, Sensei. And Hanchi Legacy?
We're talking just solely about the persons who passed.
Just who your senseis were that passed and how long you trained with them.
My first sensei that had passed was Sensei Richard Kim. I was with him for 10 years. And my second sensei was Benny Allen, and I was with him 10 or 12 years. I've been in martial arts 53 years. So my memory is a bit rusty there, but they passed as well. And I just like to say that passing is a natural occurrence. And I only had one sensei at the time.
Thanks, Hanchi. So again, let's start with you, Sensei Knispel. And break this open as much as you want, but what was your last interaction or set of interactions with your Sensei Reynolds?
So I actually saw him about a day and a half or 2 days before he passed. That was our last meeting. He was quite unwell at the time. I visited him at his home, and it was supposed to be a short visit, but we ended up visiting for a few hours and talking. It was actually, it's kind of a painful time. It was coming out of COVID, right? And I hadn't seen him for a long time because we were a little strained because I was protecting him during COVID. I didn't want to risk his health based on what we knew about COVID and how it spread and the impacts. I was kind of staying away because I was still out in the world seeing people, working, teaching class, of course, in the ways we were allowed. So I hadn't seen him for quite a while, and he had been unwell. So a little strained, but that last visit was a very positive one. We put things right. Without sounding morbid, I like to think he was waiting to see me. And we spoke about old times. We spoke about plans for the future. We spoke about the present, how the dojo was doing, typical things we would talk about. Some of his wishes for the style and what he'd like to see me do, and some of the plans I had. But previous to that, of course, was the 2 years of lockdowns, in and out of lockdowns. We of course stayed in touch, but it was a stressful time for everyone, right? I was very much focused on fighting to keep the dojo open. And certainly I was busy helping other clubs in my role as president of the Ontario Jiu-Jitsu Association. So it was a crazy time. And I think I'm kind of angry about the time that was robbed from me with him because of COVID. But I also knew that if he got COVID because of me, I would be mortified because it would have killed him for sure. It's just his health was in that state, right? But like I say, the last visit very positive, and we discussed a lot, and we were the same as always, peas in a pod, or almost father and son type of relationship, right? So it was old times as far as I was concerned. But coming out of COVID, obviously it was a difficult time for sure.
Thanks, Sensei Knispel. Sensei Suino, what was your last interaction with your teachers?
So my last interaction with Yamaguchi Sensei was in Tokyo. I went over for a visit, and he was quite frail at the time. He had gotten stomach cancer, and he was in the hospital for about 1.5 years. They remove your stomach, and then they sew your esophagus to your small intestine, and it takes a long time to A, recover from the treatment, but B, you have to kind of regrow your stomach. You have to expand the esophagus. So after 1.5 years of convalescence, he was struggling to keep weight on. He was always a very he's a small human being, but he was very muscular when he was in robust health. But toward the end, he was extremely skinny. But he and his other students were kind enough to arrange training opportunities. And I, honestly, my last memory of him was we went to a municipal hall to train in Iaido, and he sat and watched while myself and several of his students did Iaido forms. And he was very complimentary, but also was clear he was quite out of it. I mean, he wasn't practicing at that point. Great connection there. But as Sensei Knispel said, you can see the light flickering, right? The candle was starting to flicker. And I think that might have been in 2005. He passed in 2006. Yeah, that was the last time I saw Yamaguchi Sensei. Sato Sensei passed in 2011, and I actually saw him here in the States when he came over for a trip, but he was also in a long battle with prostate cancer. So both those gentlemen were shadows of their former selves the last time I saw them.
Thanks, Sensei. Hanshi Legacy, what were the, last interactions you had with your two senseis?
First, I'd like to say that Sensei Knispel's sensei was a very good friend of mine. Him and I, we competed in our lives, and he knows in various ways. And also, I have had the honor, and I mean that, he was a Nijin master with Sensei Suino Sensei. I trained with him I believe in Boston, maybe another time. Okay, the first one, I didn't live in the same city as my teachers. I traveled because I was looking for a special person. Sensei Benny Allen was the first teacher that happened to pass away. And while he was living in a city outside north of Toronto, he had succumbed to some bad habits and eventually passed away. Like there's a guy who we in my dojos all benefit from him being my sensei. He was a one of a kind, and everybody would say that, I guess, about the sensei, but well, because I have like 3 senseis, I look for specialized guys because I'm a very hard-headed, hard to learn, gotta almost be pushed into a situation, and these guys can do it. So I was, as a matter of fact, I had made an appointment with him 2 weeks prior to his passing because Randy really wanted to meet Benny Allen. And I got a phone call before the 2 weeks was up saying that he had passed. The other thing I can say is every sensei, as it should be, leaves a part of themselves in you so that they can live in the martial arts eternity. Whilst the art is being handed down, you are always handing down part of what that person gave of himself to the martial arts.
And what was your last interaction with Sensei Kim?
Sensei Kim, well, he lived in San Francisco, and
It was at Western, Sensei. I was there, and so was Sensei Suino.
yes, he came to teach a seminar in where the heck was it? In Hamilton, and whilst he was there, I called and asked if he would come because I wanted to. Since Benny Allen had passed away, and then I wanted him to. I had some students there for a while, and again, it's important to have people like that sort of present. I presented him, or he presented himself in front of the students, just to see martial arts greats that were in Canada, and everything was just turning over in those days. Just not everybody was really doing a style. It was our generation, us sitting here, that really brought styles and classical karate into Canada. And Richard Kim was one of those heads. The one story like this, is that all you want to do, or do you want me to? I went to him to learn not fighting, history, philosophy, and a bit of Zen. I told this story before, but I think it's appropriate here that whilst I was the president of the Budokan in Canada at the time, he was going to teach a seminar, so I was his host, sort of follow around behind him all the time. And he would never change with anyone. He always went into his own room, change. I waited outside the door. And when he came out, I was saying something to someone, and he disappeared around the corner. And then I ran around the corner and looked towards the gym, and he wasn't there. So I turned around to the left, and he was standing there bowing to the wall. I thought, what's going on here? And when he came back, I thought he had made a mistake. And I don't know what he was doing, honestly. I said, I'm sorry, Sensei. I was just wondering why you went to the left instead of the right. I'm sorry if I wasn't there to guide you the right way. He goes, oh no, look. And he showed me, and it was a picture of Sacred Heart of Jesus Christ. And he said, Legacy, Jesus was a great Buddha. That sort of hits home, isn't it? What kind of a person he was. He was a Buddhist, but still recognized greatness.
Thanks, Hanchi. So that's like the last interaction. And one of the questions that I have ready that Robert helped us prepare seems sort of appropriate to jump into. And we'll start again with you, Sensei Knispel. Were you ready? And take that however you like.
I don't think anyone's ever ready. I mean, we always want more time. I think that's natural. I had known his health was in decline for many years. He'd been in and out of hospital for a number of years, but martial arts wise, I was very well prepared for what I had to do. He trained me well. But from the personal and the mentor standpoint, I mean, he's my sensei. I don't think you're ever ready. It was a big blow. People find me kind of odd because I think I know Sensei Randy and Sensei Legacy were both at the memorial service. I'm not one to cry in public and to get all emotional in public, mainly because I'm there to do a job, and it's probably no good if I'm a leader in some sense for me to be in hysterics. But certainly privately, I mean, I'm still in mourning. The man was my sensei for all my life, right? So yeah, I don't think I was necessarily ready personally to say goodbye. Martial arts wise, I think he prepared me as well as he could, and I was with him a very, very long time. I had the good fortune of being with him for a very, very long time. But would I want more time? Absolutely. I mean, I think anyone would want more and more time. I'm grateful that he's not in pain anymore, because he suffered for a lot of years. But was I ready, or am I? No, of course not. I think we all want more time in the grand scheme of things.
You know, I haven't lost a sensei, but when my mom passed, it was a similar thing in that we knew it was coming. We could probably have named it to the month. Was ready in the sense of, yeah, this is coming. Still don't feel ready. But I really love what you said about being prepared as a martial artist. What a beautiful thing he gave you. And when I think of my mom, like, I was ready to live as a man in this world in many ways, partly because of her. So yeah, I like that distinction of not ready, but ready to be my own martial artist and my own man that way. Hanshi Legacy, let's go to you on this one. You know, were you ready for your senseis to pass?
Either one I never knew about, because I hadn't seen Benny Allen for quite a while. He had sort of retired and went and hid himself from everyone because he wasn't happy with the situation of his students at the time. He even lived with me for a while, you know. So in that way, because I wasn't physically as close to him as Sensei Knispel, it didn't snap so fast. It was sort of at a distance, like I hadn't been seeing him every day. So it didn't have the same effect. But I was going to say something, but you covered it perfectly with your mom. If you're in a room with your dad and you know he's dying when he passes, it's difficult to think. No, I didn't cry either. But again, I still feel that void of what could have been with mainly Benny Allen at that time. You know, like he was not ready for the grave. Circumstances prevailed. But certainly our dojos still benefit from his teaching, for sure.
Well, and I do just want to say, you know, when I've always known the name and I've known the lineage, but every time his name comes up on Punch Kick Choke Chat, it's revelatory how much he did influence us and everybody.
He was, with the exception maybe of Sensei Soroka from the Chitoryu or JK. He probably was the biggest name in Canada as far as known as a Canadian teaching martial arts. He was a bit of a Bobby whore.
Thanks, Hanshi. Sensei Suino, were you ready for the passings?
Now I am unmuted and I'll be able to expound at length on that question. That's an interesting question. Both Yamaguchi Sensei and Sato Sensei were ailing for a long time. And I don't think either of them were ready. They were tired, right? They'd both been fighting health problems for a long time. And so I think in the sense that they were ready, in the sense that they recognized that they just didn't have any more energy, that they had come to the end of their life, I was ready in that sense. Not emotionally, but, you know, you see it, it's going to go a certain way. Nothing you can do about it. The sun is going to go down tonight. Are you ready? It's coming. What's interesting to me is that, you know, as Hanshi's been talking about with Benny Allen and Richard Kim, the echoes of their influence continue. And what I don't think I was ready for, or which I really understood when my senseis passed, was how much they would influence my martial arts training in my life, especially Yamaguchi Sensei, who I've said many times on this show, taught me what it was like to, he was the first role model for me of seeing a grown-up man with who lived into his positive traits and not his issues. So both in terms of how I train and how I live my life as a man, Yamaguchi Sensei affected me more than anybody else. And to this day, you know, I trained with him weekly from 1988 to 1992, and then again on a fairly regular basis until he passed in 2006. And to this day, he's still the most influential person in my life as a role model for how to behave as a man and a human being. So ready, not ready, I don't know, because it's not over. His influence continues to shape me.
Sensei Dauphin, I don't want to put you on the spot at all, and I don't know if you want to go into this question, but before the show, you said really clearly you're not in, like you want to be here, but you don't like this topic. Do you want to talk about that at all?
I'll share a couple of things. I'm definitely not ready. I don't like thinking about it. Sensei Suino jokes about it all the time about being on the foothills of senility. And Sensei Legacy and I have a close enough relationship that he'll nod his head, because this is not a lie. This is the truth. When he talks about not being here, it makes me cry. Right. So I'm 100% not ready. You know, I was late going to the dojo this morning to train with Sensei Legacy. And there was not one thought. I drove for an hour and 10 minutes to go train with him. And I knew I was going to be late. There was not one thought about turning around, even if I could only just do one kata or spend some time with him. And so my parents are gone. Sensei Legacy has known me longer than my dad knew me and longer than my mom has known me. And I just feel uncomfortable with this topic and thinking about these things. So that's why I feel uncomfortable about it. I love these people. Like, I love them with all of my heart. Like, there's nothing that I would not do. There's not one single thing, if I had to give, that I wouldn't give.
Thanks, Sensei. Let's start with you this time, Sensei Suino. And again, expound as much as you like. Do you wish you'd done anything differently in your time with them, knowing what you know now, and that you don't get any more time with them other than the lessons that emanate?
Yes. This sounds funny. You know, during my 4 years in Japan, I trained probably between 20 and 50 hours a week. I was driven. I was a madman. You know, if I wasn't in the dojo 2 or 3 hours, I'd be at home for 2 or 3 hours practicing Iaido, or in the park, or at a seminar. I trained so much. I wish I knew then what I knew now about how to train, how to think, how to let stuff resonate into me better. I wish I'd been a better student. You know, there were very few times when I thought, oh, Sensei's just saying that, you know, or oh, he's wrong about that. Like, probably count those on one hand, versus the nearly infinity times when I was just there as an empty vessel, learning. But man, I wish somehow I could have had a little bit of what I have now in terms of understanding how stuff can resonate into you, how to be a better vessel, how to make sure my teachers understood how much I treasured what they taught me. That's something you don't get over. I mean, I don't regret it. I don't have regrets in life, but I just wish somehow I could go back in a time machine and be a better student, to be deeper, to learn faster. Instead of having that beer and watching sumo, you know, on that Wednesday night, I wish I'd gone through the kata a few more times, you know, instead of going to the dojo and fighting and trying to have big shoulders in judo. I wish I had just been a little more thoughtful. You know, you can never go back. But damn it, you know, if you could know a little bit of what you know now, right? A genius is someone who never makes the same mistake once. And the way you do that is to learn from others. And I could have been better. I wish I had been a little better. Yeah.
When I say it's really nice to hear you say that, it's the humility, Sensei Suino. Like, if somebody trains 3 1-hour classes a week, they're not even training 1/7, let alone 1/20 of the time you trained. And a lot of those people will cancel a class because, you know, it's raining out. And the idea that you train that much and it still doesn't feel like enough, I get it. but B, I think there's something so humbling about martial arts themselves and time, right? Like time is a fucking brutal mistress that we're all in a relationship with.
Well, my God, these people are giants. I think each of us can appreciate that in some of our senseis or some of the great martial arts we've seen. I mean, Sato Sensei was a giant in history. Yamaguchi Sensei was a giant man. His charisma, his ability in kendo and iaido, his ability to use simple words and to convey really deep ideas. I've never met anybody like that. You know, I know that Hanshi Legacy and Randy are big fans of Muhammad Ali. You know, imagine being able to spend 3 hours a week with Muhammad Ali, training and learning from him for 4 years. Like, would you be an empty vessel? Would you just be going, oh my God, how can I soak more of this up? Like, how can I speed up time so that when I'm with him for 3 hours, I get 30 hours? I'm never going to reach that, but if I can get as much as I can from him. And so when you have an opportunity to be somebody who's like a 1 in a million human being, there's just never enough. You just can never do enough to be that. You do everything you can, and you got to do more. So part of it is perspective, right? I was lucky to be in a room with some of the most incredible martial artists in the world has ever known. And that makes the barrier high, right? It makes the barriers you got to jump over high, I think.
Thanks, Sensei. Hanshi Legacy, let's go to you next. Is there anything you would have done differently in your time with Benny Allen or Richard Kim?
I'd have to say no, and not in a smart ass way. It's because Richard Kim lived in San Francisco, and I was there at least once a year, or not quite that many times, but I kept going as much as I could. He would come up once or twice a year as well. So I did what I could. So, and then every time I had, all the time I had with him, all the opportunities, I was there as long as he was there. You know, as long as he would allow me to be in his presence. So I did my best there. And he's a very interesting person to listen to. He has a lot of good angles and understands what most of us don't. And with Benny Allen, he told me one time, the only thing I can think of right now to say about him, we were friends outside of that, but I never called him, pardon me for saying it, Benny. It was sensitive, right? And he, for some reason, got along with me. We were probably, in our younger lives, a couple of rounders. And he even lived with me for about 6 months to a year, something like that. And he once said to me, and I'm going to put it in this way, and I swear this is true. And it privately, he said, you know, today, after looking back at everything, he said, I'm going to save my ass here. I consider only you and one other person my true student. Guys who never gave him up, never threatened anything, but just went all the time. We met in a very odd way where I was at a tournament, and we were all waiting for the sensei to come out. I was a green belt. I didn't know anybody. This old guy comes out and he's in front of the mirror and he's doing his Tai Chi stuff. He's wearing track pants and a white t-shirt. And he's running shoes and going squeak, 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 squeak. John Pearson was with me, and I said to him, "Oh, it's the old guy having an epileptic fit up there." And he heard me. So he just turns around and looks at me and goes, "Line up." Oh, I went, and then within that second, he said, "You come up here." And I won't go any further than that. That was our introduction. But I think that he was just a good old boy, but with all this talent and all this power. I have a sign on my board that's directly related to him. It says, "The power of being soft."
Mm.
Benny Allen probably would have been the greatest white crane practitioner of all time had I only been able to connect him with Anthony Sandoval from the United States. And I'm sure that Sensei Knispel knows of Benny Allen, or have you ever seen him?
I never had the chance to meet him. I think I think he had retired around the time. I may have seen him when I was a kid and didn't appreciate it, but certainly the name was known in our dojo. Sensei Reynolds knew him,
Oh yeah.
and it was mentioned, right? And he was a force of nature on the Canadian martial arts scene for sure, right? Between him and Sensei Doug Knispel, I think they had profound impacts on the martial artists of your generation. I think they had a huge impact on your generation, and subsequently all the rest of us have benefited from that, right? He was something else for sure.
Thanks,
Everybody
Hansi.
knows what my son's name is, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's
Um,
Benny, in case you don't know.
Sensei Knispel, what about you? Is there anything you would have done differently in your 42 years with Sensei Reynolds?
I again, without sounding ignorant, I probably wouldn't change too much. I'm angry at COVID. That COVID robbed me of 2.5, 3 years for sure. I was really fortunate in that I had a very unique relationship with my sensei. I suppose the Japanese terminology would be uchideshi, right? Inside student. Short of living with him, I mean that implies a live-in student. I never lived with him, but I was that close to him. I used to launder his gis, right? He never washed a gi from the time I got my black belt, right? I used to follow him. I was his assistant in uke for his seminars from the time I got my black belt. I served an apprenticeship shortly after I got my black belt, and I guess theoretically you could say it ended last year. But I was really fortunate in that relationship. I actually, as happens when people pass away, other people, like my sensei had other students, don't get me wrong. I was really fortunate in that I was the one that had the most mat time with him, bar none. And someone got me upset not too long ago. And I said, look, if there's any question about my closeness to the man gave me his personal black belt when I was in 1993. I was 21 years old. That was his signal that I was to be the next one under him. In 2002, he gave me his personal red belt. The last time he taught publicly, he gave me his title, right? So if there's any doubt that I had a close relationship with the man, I mean, when it comes to martial arts, I was really fortunate and lucky. And by no means was I the most talented of his students. I just listened really well. I took things in. And I tried my best to do what he wanted and keep and kind of organize his thoughts. But like I say, by no means am I the most talented of his students, but I'm just the guy who wouldn't go away. And I was there with him. And I was one of the few that could talk to him on a personal level and get away with uncomfortable conversations. We've argued more than once, or we had argued more than once, and I lived to tell the tale. But my sensei could be a force of nature, as Sensei Legacy will attest to. He's well known for some of his exploits, but I had the ability. I was like the sensei whisperer, right? I could reason with him. I could. We just had that type of relationship back and forth. Like I say, short of living with him, I never ever lived with him, but I did everything else an uchideshi would do, and I had the good fortune of being his assistant, his uke, and ultimately his inheritor for the years I was with him. I mean, I grew up with him, and similar to what the others have said, I mean, he's been with me longer than my own mother was with me. Right? It's that type of relationship. I mean, I'm really fortunate. My father is still alive, and we're very close. But he Sensei Reynolds had a profound impact on my life. So no, I really have no regrets. In fact, every day I go to a job at a company that he opened the door for. 34 years I've been with the same company, and he's the one who arranged for me to get the interview to get in. So he's a living presence in my life. He's a living presence in my dojo, short of, I mean, his portraits on my shomen. But each one of my students knows who he is, how important he is to me, and why we do what we do. And this year we're fortunate to celebrate 50 years as a dojo, and we're going to have a celebration where he'll be front and center again. So no, the only thing I regret really is the time COVID robbed from me.
Thanks, Sensei. Sensei Dauphin, before we go to our last question, when he said, "I'm just the guy who didn't go away," I saw a pretty nice glimmer in your eyes. And I know it's not quite on topic, but why does that light you up?
It's funny. I talked to Sensei Suino about things, and he said to me recently, he said, "Are you going to quit martial arts?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Then it's all just logistics." Right. And so that's when it comes with Sensei Legacy and Sensei Suino and I, it's all just logistics. Like, we're going to be training together forever. I'm whatever forever is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it'll be forever. Everything else is just logistics. It's just, like Sensei Knispel said, Sensei Legacy and I have disagreed on things. We've had arguments, and in the end, we always hugged it out and told each other that we loved each other. And I think actually those disagreements and hugging it out, that makes your relationship like stronger. Nobody wants to be an ass kisser, right? So, and I'm really proud of the fact that, I know what will make Sensei Legacy uncomfortable. I know what topics to bring up that will make him uncomfortable. And I'm proud that I can sit at his kitchen table and bring those topics up and we can talk it through. Like, I'm really proud of that. Yeah, that's why I smiled, because I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, I love that. It's just logistics. We are going to go around the horn on our last question. I'll start with you, Sensei Suino. And it's a pretty broad question, but people are watching this. What would you like them to take away from this chat?
A few things. The old cliche, and I can't remember what the numbers are, right? But they say something like, "Oh, if you spend a year searching for the right sensei, you will not have wasted your time." I think that's true. I think you need to spend time and find somebody who's really legitimately deeply in the martial arts, who's good at it, has good credentials, who's serious about it, and is going to stay in it a long time. If you do that, then your training time will be not wasted. It will be positive. Whereas if you pick a bad teacher to start with, you're going to have to switch, and you might learn things that you have to unlearn. So that's step one. Step two, throw yourself into it. Everybody I've seen who's really, really good at the martial arts has had a period of time, whether that be a year, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, where they just throw themselves into it. They obsess about what they do. And of course, many of the folks on this call have been obsessive about it for 30, 40, 50 years now. And the last part is, at some point, don't know when that is for everybody, but the last point is, take some time to reflect on where you are in the pantheon, the history of martial arts, your teachers, where they came from, your teachers, and what are you doing to pass that on? We're all going to die someday. And the way martial arts continues to live is through the quality of the participants and how we pass it on to others. So treasure the past, live fully into the present, be mindful of the future. It's on us. We're responsible for what martial arts looks like in 10 years, in 100 years. And if you treasure the history, it's going to make a big difference on how you go forward.
Thanks, Sensei Suino. Hanshi Legacy, what about you? We're going around the horn for our last comment. What would you like people to take away from this?
I'll just use the person's first name. I have a couple of things. Number one is, one time I was standing in the room with Richard Kim and one of his students. Some of you will be able to guess who this is. His name is Dennis. And he stands up like the person that he was, and says out loud, and so everybody in the crowd, "There is only one sensei," meaning Sensei Kim. And I stood up and I said, what about Sensei Kim's teacher? The place went dead quiet. He felt like it. He started to sweat, like he was soaking wet. He said, an idiot. At that anyway, the other thing is, it's a tradition in martial arts. You put a picture of the senseis who went before you on your shomen, so they're not forgotten. Just like your grandfathers and your grandmothers. It's a tradition. It's something to learn, because sometime in your life you will become that person. And the last thing I'm going to say is, when you're learning the art of karate, what are you learning? Really? Yes, you're learning how to defend yourself. And overall, you're learning to protect the most important thing. That's the art of life. Life itself. Being friends, being with your senseis, being with your parents. Don't leave them. When they get older like me, don't leave them behind. Don't think you're smart. Don't look at me like you can beat me up now because I'm almost 80 years old. You know why? Because you never know.
Thanks, Hanshi. We're going to give the last word to Sensei Knispel, but I do just want to ask Sensei Dofan if you want to chip in on this one at all, what you'd like people to take away from this.
I'm really proud of the show, the topics that we talk about and the people that we've had on. I wrote down a couple names because their names are fitting for the show. One would be Sensei Fumio Demora, who is on this show, who's passed away. Hanshi Bill Hines, who was one of Sensei Legacy's best friends, a student of Benny Allen, who has passed away. Hanshi Chuck Merriman, who there's lots of things about him now being interned in Okinawa. Everybody speaks highly of him. And really surprising is Sensei Angel Lemus, who these are 4 people who we've had on this show, that they're no longer with us anymore. Really proud to have had them on the show and actually known them, and really proud of the topics that we're talking about, as uncomfortable as some of them might be.
Thanks, Sensei. I was just looking down to confirm some dates. I just wanted to add the reason I am so excited about this topic, despite it being around something that can be sad. Unless I have these dates wrong, Sensei Richard Kim, Yamaguchi Sensei, born in 1917. And what I mean by that is we're here talking, and that's not to negate Sensei Reynolds, of course, Sensei Knispel, but we're here talking to Sensei Suino and Sensei Legacy, who are like hand to hand, trained in space, breathing the air with these men, being given information. And as Hanshi said, they had senseis. And so what I'd like people to take away is, I don't care if you're working a bag, rolling on the mats, or throwing punches or kicks. You're part of something that spans so far back. It didn't start with you. It will not end with you. And it's only through this time with our senseis. And yeah, they will pass. We'll all pass. But my God, when I think that I personally can touch 1917 and further back through you two, that's insane to me. That blows my imagination and my historical love and my classical sense of being part of something into a beautiful sense of, I don't know what that is, but I'm just so happy I get to do it. Sensei Knispel, we did want to throw out just a little extra thank you to you because it is a little more recent with your sensei passing. I know that loss can maybe never abate, or maybe it does, but thanks for coming on and being willing to dig into this with something quite recent. We'd like you to have the last word. What would you like people to take away from this episode?
I think I agree a lot with, I agree totally with Sensei Suino and Sensei Legacy. I think you want to find a good sensei that you can grow with over the years, right? That relationship between the sensei and the student, that necessarily changes over time. It becomes less about putting your hand there and your foot there, and more about it's almost life lessons or mentorship, I guess, towards the end of the relationship. So I think it's important that you take the time to find a good sensei, and hopefully it's someone you can grow with over time as both of you go through Shu, Ha, and Ri. That relationship changes. Not to imply I'm anything way in Ri or Ha or anything. I'm just training, but find someone you can grow with for sure, and never ever forget the great gift you've been given when you do. My sensei used to say, be careful about who you call sensei, right? Make sure you want to make sure it's someone someone worthwhile that you can grow with. And as far as being here, it's a year, just over a year out since I lost my sensei, so it is still, the scars are quite fresh, but I am pleased to say he's a living presence in my dojo. We bow to him at the shomen every day. My kids know who he is. People who've never met him know who he is, and certainly his teachings come out every day when I step on the mats. And I dare say, when I get the good fortune to travel, there really isn't a person out there who doesn't know who my sensei is, because I teach. My job, as I see it, is to preserve, to protect, and to develop and extend what he's given me, the great art of Kitsunedo Jiu-Jitsu. But if people should take away anything, just I think treasure a good sensei, and never ever forget that they give you, we stand on their shoulders, right? It's that lineage you talk about, right? It goes back. My sensei goes back to the beginnings of jiu-jitsu in this country, and I don't take that lightly, right? I very much protect him, and protect the art, and protect the style, and try to give back as much as I can.
Thank you so much, Sensei. And thank you, Senseis. And thank you to Robert Schlumsky, who posited this topic and helped prepare the questions. We're really grateful you all watched, and we're really grateful, Senseis, for your time and your experience. Have a beautiful night or day whenever you're watching this.